Love. Some would say it took a backseat when the pandemic forced us apart. As a family-run and proudly Canadian-owned company, Charm Diamond Centers saw the need to bring us together with tales of love and created the Canadian Love Map podcast. Since then, we've shared hundreds of real, uplifting stories that prove love conquers all. So thank you for listening. We couldn't do it without you. And remember, love starts here.
Recognize that everybody's human. Some humans make bad decisions. Some humans just don't understand. I believe, in my opinion, that they deserve to be met with love.
Hi, I'm Nancy Regan. Today's love story belongs to Tyler Simmonds. He's an amazing award-winning Black Canadian filmmaker who's making a difference in the world with his voice, talent, and a commitment to love. Tyler, how are you? Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, this is just a pleasure. And I guess we've got to lead with love because that's what you do.
Yes, it's what I try to do.
Tell me about your relationship with love these days.
It's my relationship with love. That's a really good question. I feel like, it's been a really tough couple of years, and I feel genuinely that the way that I am able to get through it and to be functional through all of this stuff that's going on in the world right now is by leading with love and keeping love at the center of my life.
That's a beautiful description. Let's talk a little bit about your life and give people an idea of what your journey has been. Can you take me back to your experience growing up?
Yeah, for sure. I grew up in North Preston, which is the largest Black community in Canada. And I grew up around some amazing family. It was really interesting growing up in North Preston, just because, next door, I had cousins that lived next to me, and my grandmother and my granddad lived next to me. So it was always family around. I always felt safe. And I always felt that I was different from everyone, which sort of made things a bit challenging for me. I felt like I didn't really fit in, and that caused a lot of anxiety. I was afraid of saying the wrong thing and doing the wrong thing, more than most kids, I think. And it caused a lot of sadness, but I had these amazing family members around me. So it was, it was really interesting. It was me trying to feel grateful for the family that I have around me, but at the same time, feeling this pain within that a lot of people didn't really know about.
I was just going to ask, did you mask that well with the people around you?
When I talk to people about it now, they say that I did mask it really well, but I didn't feel like I did. When I was younger, I thought that everybody knew that I was dealing with this pain inside, but whenever I speak to other people, they say that I was really good at masking it, and they had no idea.
It's powerful because there are so many people around us all who fit that description, right? We think they're okay. We think they're doing great. And inside they're aching.
Yeah, that's so true.
So how did you eventually come to address that sadness, that depression?
Yeah, so I went a really long time as a kid feeling depressed and anxious, and it was my last year of high school. I remember I was a bit fed up, and I was thinking, I have to do something about this. I have to figure out what's going on in my mind. And I went to the school library, and I printed off these different articles about anxiety and depression. And it was the first time I really looked really deep into it. And I took these articles home to my parents, and I showed them to them. And that was when things started to change. My parents read these articles, and they said to me, they were like, yeah, we don't really know much about this. We don't know much about depression. We don't know much about anxiety, but we believe you, and we're going to take you to see your family doctor, and we want you to get help for it, which was really, really helpful. And since then, that's when my journey started with mindfulness. I started learning, oh, I'm not the only person that feels this way. There are a ton of people in the world that feel this way. And just knowing that, it was really good validation for myself. And I didn't feel alone anymore.
When do you think you learned that power of speaking it to others? Apart from any therapy you might have had, I'm talking about friends or family.
Yeah, when I first talked to my family about it, I didn't really, I don't know. It was just this, it felt like it was this fire inside of me. I was like, I have to let them know how I'm feeling, and I need help. But I wasn't really communicating it in the right way. At times I would get angry and just frustrated. I would get frustrated at family members for not understanding, and it took me some time. I had to do a lot of mindfulness practices. I had to speak to psychiatrists and to a psychologist, and I read a lot of books on mindfulness and mental health. And also compassion was a really big thing. I started reading a lot about and having empathy for others and meeting them where they are. And I started to realize how to talk to my family about this. I started realizing that in a way, there is a right and wrong way. And the ways of me in the past getting frustrated with them for not understanding, I now look back at that, and I would never do that, because it's not their fault that they didn't understand. And I realized that was a part of the healing process too. Having that compassion for other people, it helped me have more compassion for myself. It's really the leading with love thing. It's I think when you lead with love, and you're really dealing with something, and you take it to somebody that you care about, and you're doing it in a loving way. For me, it's helped me heal a lot.
Let's talk about the healing around racism right now, on a societal level, on a global level, but also for you, and how love factors into that stew of racism and Black Lives Matter.
Mm. Yeah, I'm just pausing because it's been such a long couple of years with so many racial injustices and so many traumas that not only the Black community has been dealing with, but the Indigenous community, the Asian community, and there's a lot of pain right now, and I think about when I first saw the George Floyd video and how my first reaction, I think rightfully so, was a lot of people's first reaction. It was anger. I was really angry about that. And I had a talk with my friend, Verena Rizk, and we talked about how we can address these issues and how we can even just think about these issues in a more productive way. And I think it's extremely important for the Black community and Indigenous community and Asian community to hold people accountable. And at the same time, to do it with love, which is something that's hard to do, because when you're frustrated and you're angry, you want to yell, you want to let people know how upset you are. And I think that that's okay. But I think that for myself, the more productive way of handling these issues is to hold them accountable, but also recognize that everybody's human. Some humans make bad decisions. Some humans just don't understand, but they're still human. And I believe, in my opinion, that they deserve to be met with love.
It takes my breath away a little, and it makes me very emotional to hear you say that, and put it so beautifully, really.
Wow.
I'm sure there are people who say to you, "Come on, I mean, why aren't you angry?" And because I can, as a white Nova Scotian, I can easily put myself in a mindset where I'd think, "How angry would I be if I were part of the Black community here?" Even just because of the fact that it's taken so long for good, well-meaning white people to wake up to racism.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. It's really frustrating, but I think even with COVID happening, I think a big thing to me now, it's about us all learning to love one another. And I know that a lot of people say that is this cliche thing to say, or it's not really realistic. And I get that. I really do get it. But I've been angry. I've spoken out with anger before, and I remember how that made me feel. That felt painful for me. That didn't feel like I was really doing anything to move things forward. And even in this pandemic, I've really been sitting with my thoughts so much, and I think a lot, like, okay, what can I do to help things get better without just reacting? Because I'm going to feel anger. It's natural. I'm going to be frustrated. It's natural. So I have to let myself feel these things, because it's natural. I have to let it out somehow. But how am I going to communicate it? How am I going to have a conversation with somebody? I have to do it with love, because that's the only way I really believe people can change, is if you approach them with love.
This podcast is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, Canada's largest family-owned jewelry store. They are proud to be putting love on the map, and the staff at Charm Diamond Centers are thrilled to be a part of your love story too. So visit charmdiamondcenters.com or one of your local stores. Love starts here. Well, you are an amazing example of making love a verb instead of a noun.
Thank you
And
so much.
in some ways, you animate love by creating films. Tell me how that got started.
Yeah, so I actually started making these abstract type of films when I was in my early 20s, probably like 21, 22. And it was my way of expressing how I felt through visuals. And it was just something that I really fell in love with. Being someone that was very introverted, still am, and very anxious. It was this way of showing people, oh, this is who I am. And yeah, recently it's turned into something more, I feel. And I think that I feel like my creative talent, it's grown as I've grown as a person. So when I'm putting out Lead with Love, the series, or I'm working on the docu-series that I'm working on right now, and all of these film projects, I like to put my heart into it. So if I'm feeling like the world needs more love, and it's my job to put more of that into the world, then that's really where the idea for the film projects come from. Yeah, it's always been the same for me, really. Even in my early 20s, a lot of the time I was in a dark place, and a lot of those films are pretty dark. So it's really, if you go back and you look through all of them, you can kind of see that the more that I progressed, the films progressed in a certain way.
Yeah. Do you, from my perspective, looking at your story and your success, I see this equation, and I'm curious as to whether you feel the equation of purpose plus passion equals sort of this amazing success that has come about for you, that you've created. Do you feel that for instance, the Huffington Post named you one of the 10 inspirational people under 30 you should be following on Twitter, and your filmmaking is, receiving a great amount of notice. Do you feel like your success is built on that purpose and passion that you feel?
Oh, 100%. I actually I tell people this a lot, that I really don't feel like I'm that much better as a filmmaker than a lot of people or anything. I don't think that I'm that much better as a speaker as a lot of people, but I am just really, really passionate. And I feel that I do know my purpose in life, which I'm really grateful for. But it's really this fire inside of me, and I just keep going. There's so many times in my life where I've been told no, and like when it comes to like a project or something like that, but it never has stopped me. Like even with the public speaking, a lot of people know about the TED Talk that I did, and We Day and stuff like that. But before that, I was told by a lot of people, like, oh yeah, you can't speak here because that's not what we're looking for, and stuff like that. And I think a part of that is my passion. I'm not afraid of rejection at all, which is, I feel like, makes me bit of an alien sometimes.
Well, it's a paradox too, isn't it? Considering your history with mental health,
Mm,
considering your past with mental health struggles, it's a paradox that you don't have that fear of failure.
yeah, it's I remember when I had a lot of fear of failure in the past, and um, and it felt crippling at times. And I remember it took me going to like hitting rock bottom basically, with my mental health and getting in a really, really dark place for me to sort of change that way of thinking. I, I feel like a switch just turned in my head, and I thought, you know what, rejection isn't that bad. It's a lesson, and I made this promise to myself that if I'm going to live here on Earth, if I'm going to stay alive, that I'm actually going to live. I'm actually going to just go for the things that I want, no matter how afraid I am.
Whew. So with love as your chosen tool and fuel as well, what are the things you want to change? What do you want to do?
Um, I want to improve a lot of things, by injecting my peace into the world, by injecting what I feel, what I like, my passions into the world and into other people. And I never really think I want to change the world because it just sounds so big and it feels so overwhelming. And I really think that this world is a beautiful place. There's a lot of things that are are pretty bad about it. There are things that make us angry and sad, and we wish we're different. But I think that everything has the potential to grow into something better, and I just want to use my voice and use my different outlets as this thing that can inject something into all of these things, even if it's somebody that, I don't know, somebody that's so different from me and their mission isn't love. I want to be able to let them see that there's this guy who's out there advocating for love and still wants the best for them, even though they probably have a lot of hate in their heart, just because I believe so much. And I've always been that way since I was a kid. I just really believe that things can improve and that we can improve things. We just at times need to get out of our own ways.
And what about mental health? What do you really feel needs to be done, and how do you want to be a part of that happening?
Yeah, with mental health, I think there needs to be a lot more people who are speaking openly and helping reduce the stigma. And right now, I really feel that the Black community, we need to know that it's okay to speak about our mental health. It's okay to see a therapist. It's okay to receive help. The fear that's there, it's very valid, and I think that the more that we talk about it and we try to normalize it in a way, I feel like we can just help people feel so less alone. I know right now during this pandemic, so many people are feeling alone, especially youth, and loneliness is a very it can really eat at you, and make you depressed and just cause things like suicidal thoughts. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so open about talking about my past with living with depression and things like that, because I want people to know that they're not alone. When you're depressed, it feels so lonely, but there are so many people in this world that really genuinely just care and want to help. And even if they don't know you sometimes, they just want to help.
Let's talk about that sense of connection and community that's so important, that sense of belonging, by going back to where we kind of started this conversation. And let's talk about the community you grew up in. You said North Preston is the largest Black community in Canada. And after a year and a half where we've seen so much turmoil and such, I hope, an important shifting of sands towards people being loving, as you are talking about, toward anyone, no matter what their skin color or ethnic origin or height or sexual preference is. But what I would love to do is turn the focus on your community that you grew up in for a moment, and let's talk about the beauty of it. Tell me what you loved about that community growing up.
Oh, it's so beautiful. The different people in the community, so many different characters with so much love, like so much love. And I think that's one of the reasons why I feel so strongly about love too, because you think about a place like North Preston or East Preston, Preston overall, you think about the history of it and how the people were put there to not survive. And
Let's dig into that just for a moment, because for those who aren't from Nova Scotia, they may not know that it's an area that is isolated from the city.
mhm.
It's you talk about loneliness. It's physically isolated from the city.
Yeah, it's a place where we were put to not survive, not very much resources. And it's become is what's so inspirational to me. When you go into North Preston or East Preston, you see love. You see people that are waving to each other and just hanging out with each other. You see kids running around. It's almost like a storybook type of feel. And so when I think about the past of North Preston or the past of Black people in general, and then I think about my community, how these are people who are so forgiving, so loving, always there when you need them. I've always felt the safest in North Preston. It's like everything. I don't know. Everything sort of makes sense to me when it comes to love. It's like, okay, this is what happiness is. Happiness is being around the people that you care about and being there for the people that you care about. There are bad things that have happened in this world. There are terrible things that have happened in this world. There are terrible things that happen to my people. But just seeing the amount of love in all of them, it's just mind-blowing. And I remember that growing up. I remember hanging out with my friends around North Preston, and it was just so fun. And I remember going outside of the community and people sort of having these stereotypes of what North Preston was, in them living in more suburban areas. but me feeling deep inside, like, I don't feel as safe in this person's community as I feel in North Preston, but they have this perception of North Preston that it's this violent place, which was always weird to me. And I didn't see that same type of joy that I would always see in North Preston when I would leave it. It almost seemed like it was this community where we came from a people who had to make something out of nothing, and we were grateful to be alive. We weren't thinking. I feel that the majority of the people growing up around me, we weren't thinking, oh, we have to become these rich people, or we have to, I don't know, just have all of these external objects to become happy. It was about the feeling of playing with our friends, the feeling of just being around my granddad, my grandmom. And those were the really important things to me.
How do you feel when your voice or your presence through your films hits home with other people, maybe young people who are struggling with mental health issues? How does it feel for you to make a difference to someone who's in the same sort of situation you used to be in?
It feels really amazing. It reminds me that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. At times it can also feel overwhelming. The feeling of feeling overwhelmed is often like, oh, do people think that I'm just this specific type of person? Like putting me in a box, which can be really overwhelming and frustrating. But if I'm helping, I feel amazing about that. Yeah.
I love talking to you because of your sense of presence. And I think a lot of people think of presence when they, think stage presence, but you are rooted in presence from my perspective. Anyway,
Thank you so much.
Does that feel true for you?
That definitely does feel true. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing in a world that, is filled with a lot of people who are avoiding presence. It's a beautiful thing to see someone show up really, truly in the moment. And I want to thank you for showing up here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to the Canadian Love Map. If you love us, please subscribe and share. We'll be back next week with another love story to add to the map. This podcast is presented and made possible by Charm Diamond Centers. It's hosted by me, Nancy Regan, and is produced and distributed by Podstarter.